Hello, all of you amazing and creative teachers, and welcome to the Music Teacher Mastermind Podcast, where we troubleshoot together a variety of issues and challenges concerning all things teaching. My name is Jackie, and today I am thrilled to discuss ways to enhance summer income, and that is with collaborative piano, also known as accompanying. Now, listen, before you sign off and think, this one is not for me, you might want to give this one a shot anyway. Because Rachel Ehring, who is my guest today, is the accompanying master as far as I am concerned, and she lays it all out in a way that might just convince you otherwise. Now, not only does Rachel have sound advice, but she also offers lots of information on her YouTube channel, as well as a detailed course designed for pianists who want to accompany. Rachel Ehring is a classically trained pianist and teacher with over 20 years of professional accompanying experience. As a collaborative pianist, Rachel has performed on 5 continents and throughout the entire United States. She holds a doctorate in collaborative piano from CU Boulder and has served on faculty and staff at Henderson State University and Concordia University, Irvine. Rachel currently serves as director of a music conservatory in Orange, California, and as choral accompanist for several youth and adult choirs. When she isn't playing the piano, you might find Rachel walking her beagle or reading books with her son. I think you guys are going to really enjoy this. Rachel is one of my dear friends, and I adore her work, and I think you will too. And with that, let's get started. Greetings, teachers, and welcome to the Music Teacher Mastermind Podcast. My name is Jaclyn Mrozek, but you can call me Jackie. And today with me, I have who I consider a very good friend these days. And I sometimes nickname her my podcast coach. You might recognize her, the lovely Rachel Ehring. Welcome, Rachel. I'm so glad to have you today.
Thank you for having me, Jackie. I'm so happy to be here.
And you, as we know, are such a wealth of information of all kinds. And we could talk about so much different stuff. But I asked you here today because you share a lot of information with teachers about accompanying and collaborating and that kind of stuff. And I was thinking this would be such a great way for teachers to make a little bit of extra cash in the summer when a lot of us maybe we don't have as many students. I think it's a very common problem in our industry. And what you're doing can really help fill in the gaps. So,
yes, accompanist is considered kind of an old-fashioned term, I guess. That's what a pianist used to be called when they were accompanying a singer or instrumentalist. And then I think the accompanists got a little bit of a bee in their bonnet and wanted a little more recognition. And so they came up with this term collaborative pianist to show that the two parts really are equal. And they are. Of course, the people are equal. And as performers, they're equal. In fact, there's times when the pianist is doing far more work than the soloist. And so it does make sense to acknowledge that and call them a collaborative pianist. Now I've heard people say they don't even like that. They want to just be called a pianist, which is also fair. For me, I know that if I show up and do a great job, people are going to respect me, and it doesn't matter so much what they call me.
well, that's a great way to look at things because I know it is sometimes like, how do I refer to myself? What's the correct term? And you don't want to look like you don't know what you're talking about. So,
Well, and people, like in the general population, nobody knows what a collaborative pianist is. And no one can even say accompanist. It's like accompanyist, it comes out wrong. So, like, there's really no winning. So maybe pianist is the best. I don't know.
you were an accompanist forever. Like, that's what your doctorate's in, right?
Yeah. So I had a whole other life before piano teaching and music administration and all of that. I was a full-time accompanist for, I guess, almost 20 years, I'm afraid to say.
Wow.
Yeah, I got a master's and doctorate in collaborative piano. It's actually kind of funny that we're talking about it because my master's, the program was called a master's in accompanying. The doctorate was called a doctorate in collaborative piano. So, I mean, even the higher ed people can't agree. So,
Now, were you at the same school or did you go to a different one? for your master's and your doctorate?
Oh, I did 2 different. I did my master's at University of Kansas. I grew up in Kansas and decided to go back there for my master's, and then I did my doctorate at University of Colorado in Boulder.
I want to talk about how accompanying really like shaped you as a teacher as well, because you're also a teacher, you run a conservatory, so you know how it is to be the two. So, yeah, how has it shaped you as a musician and a teacher?
So I did my undergrad in piano performance, like so many of us did. And, I had done some accompanying, like I had played for my church choir a little bit. I'd played for a few singers here and there. And there were accompanists, like staff accompanists at the school, but they were all significantly older than me and, had been doing it for years and years. And it never even occurred to me that I could do that and what the path would be. I guess I thought that I had to be middle-aged to do that. I don't
Yeah.
know. So, after I graduated or when I was about to graduate, I really didn't have any idea what I was gonna do with my life because at that time, didn't really wanna teach, like full-time be a full-time piano teacher. I kinda thought I would be working in an office answering phones and then play a little piano here and there on the side. And one of the voice teachers approached me and said, "Hey, one of our staff accompanists is leaving. Would you be interested in helping us out doing some accompanying for voice students?" And I said, sure. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna pay me to play the piano? Like, that sounded amazing. Like, my dream come true. And so that was kind of the beginning, and I was so fortunate to work at the school that I had attended because the voice teachers all knew me, and they really guided me, and those middle-aged accompanists that I was working with really mentored me as well and helped me out as a young accompanist. And because I was in a college setting, I guess maybe there was a little bit more pressure than, like, what you're talking about with weddings and things like that. It really it's just playing the piano, right? I mean, yes, there are a few extra skills that are helpful too, but if you think of it as I'm a pianist and I know how to play the piano, then you can absolutely just add on those few little skills and be successful.
Right. And I do think and I'm totally going to throw this out there because it's something that I've been thinking for a while, but I've never verbalized it. So I'm curious what you'll think about this. But I think a lot of us, if you go back to like your college days, you're practicing like crazy. Even for teachers who maybe didn't go to college for piano, there was definitely, I think, around that age is where you are playing very difficult music and you're studying it and you're into it. Okay, fast forward 10, 15, 20 years, you are not spending as much time at the piano as you did. Hopefully, you're spending a little bit of time. But I know for me, sometimes I get in these spurts where I'm practicing for like 3 weeks and then I don't touch the piano for a month.
Mhm.
And that's as horrible as that is to say, it's just real life.
It is.
And so I think that a lot of us compare ourselves to our younger selves where we were able to play anything and amazing and these Bach fugues, like, and all that fun stuff. And so I think that we need to be back at that level in order to accompany.
Mhm.
Again, this is just a random thought, but I'm just wondering if you've heard that from other people.
I haven't heard it in that way, but I totally understand. And it's interesting because when I was working as an accompanist full time, I was playing the piano for hours every day because it was the job. I mean, hours and hours. And so even now, because I'm not doing that, most of my job is administrative and teaching. I feel like I'm so out of shape. And so I am doing some accompanying for the church and stuff. So I am playing, but not nearly as much as I was. And so it's hard not to think about, oh man, back when I was playing 6 hours a day, I was at such a better place. One really tiny thing that I've discovered recently that helps me I feel like get back in shape quickly is hand exercises, which I know people have different thoughts about hand exercises, but I feel like they're really good for strengthening those weak fingers and getting me back to a better place and feeling like I can just focus on, playing to the bottom of the keys and just feeling the notes and everything. And I feel It helps me be more confident when I step on stage. I don't know if anyone else will have that experience, but that's just a little thing. The other thing that I would say to you, Jackie, is much of the collaborative repertoire, especially if you're just getting started, it's not going to be nearly as hard as those massive solo pieces that we spent months and months learning back in undergrad or when we were younger. Now, there are very, very difficult collaborative pieces, so maybe don't start with those, the instrumental sonatas, and some of those are really tricky, but there's so many gigs and opportunities where the music is pretty much sight readable. You might have a few little spots you have to practice, but for the average advanced level pianist, you could totally sit down and sight read, and it's just a matter of learning how to follow and listen and some of those skills that we can talk about.
Well, let's go ahead and shift over to the types of gigs that maybe we can get, especially as summer comes across. And you and I kind of talked a little bit before as we were preparing for this, and I kept bringing up weddings. Like, I'm like, wedding, wedding, wedding. And I think in my mind, summers equals weddings. But there's more that you can do other than just finding weddings. So, can we just talk about the type of gigs that you can find and maybe how you can get them?
Yes, absolutely. So weddings are a good one for summer. Absolutely. Another one that I've done in the past quite a bit in the summer is kids musical theater. A lot of times musical theater gigs, especially with kids, often don't pay very well. But,
Mhm.
if you're just trying to get some experience and get your feet wet, it's fun. Like, I actually love doing it, especially if you have kids who are interested in doing that. Like, if you have your own kids who maybe wanna
Yeah.
do that,
Yeah.
then you could
Or
help
your
out.
own students.
Yeah,
A
or your
lot
own
of
students.
students are in that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that might be a way to find out about some of those things, but when I was in grad school, I would do that in the summers, play for kids musical theater camps, and sometimes I would even be teaching the music, like, they would call me the music director, but it was much, much less pressure than being the music director for a big show for a theater company where you have to lead a band and you have to program all these different sounds on the synthesizer, and it's like a whole thing that I didn't really know about. But doing the kids stuff, that was a great way to just, like, have some fun, make a little money, and, earn a little income in the summer. So that's one thing that came to mind specifically for summer. Another thing that is just around the corner is a lot of studios are having their spring recitals. So if you partner with like a violin teacher or a voice teacher who needs a pianist for one of their recitals, that's a great place to start. And a lot of that repertoire really isn't going to be super difficult. If you play for a violin teacher, it's probably going to be a lot of the easy Suzuki rep that you'd be able to sight read pretty easily.
I did that once for a voice teacher at the academy that I taught at, and I was really rusty. I was really out of shape, and my daughter was in the voice recital, and I wanted to say no so badly, but it was about a week before, and the guy that she had hired to play backed out. So she's like, "Oh, Jackie, I need you to fill in, like, whatever." And so I actually got to see the pieces for the first time about a day before, and I got to run through with a few of the students about a half hour before the show started. And let's just say that all my performance faking skills came in
Mhm.
and it was fine. I, like, actually resorted a lot to, like, leaving out I think I just would play, like, the first note of or the first chord of each measure of my left hand and, like, all the fun stuff in the middle, I was just like, "Nope."
Yeah.
And it was fine because everybody was really focused on the
Mhm.
vocalist, and it worked just fine. So I just wanted to share that little story of
That's a
me
good
being all
story.
panicky, and it worked. It worked. And,
Yeah.
would I wanna go through that again? No, I definitely would like to have a little bit more preparation, but, yeah, joining up and collaborating with other teachers, that's a great way to do it, for sure.
Yeah. Another, one that just popped into my head for summer is a lot of church pianists go on vacation during the summer, and they need a sub. There's a church that For several years, I would sub there the last week in July, the last Sunday in July, and the first Sunday in August because their music director always went on vacation for those 2 weeks. And so if you don't have a regular church job, but that's something that you're interested in, maybe starting to do, it's a great way to just kind of get your feet wet, get your foot in the door. I'm using a lot of feet analogies here.
Yeah, it works. Okay, so you listed off weddings, theater camps, theater, children's theater over the summer, churches, collaborating with other teachers. How do we get that? Like, let's say, like, okay, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. How do you find
Where
it?
do I go?
Facebook groups are actually a pretty good way right now. I think if you have a local group for musicians, and it doesn't even have to be piano specific, at least where I live, there's a group, I think it's called SoCal Musician Gigs or something like that. You can just like search on
Oh,
Facebook.
okay.
And then people will just go in and post if they're looking for a musician and you can respond. Honestly, connecting with other pianists is a great way because a lot of times pianists will hear about a gig through word of mouth and maybe they can't do it. They're busy that weekend or they already have a church job or whatever. And if you let them know, hey, I would love to start doing more of this, let me know if you hear of anything, they can reach out to you if they're not available for gigs that they get offered. So that's a good way. Connecting with, like I said, voice teachers, instrumental teachers, if that's something that you're interested in. It can feel weird to just like send a cold email saying like, hey, I want to be an accompanist. Do you have any work for me? To a church or something. But if you offer to be a sub for like high school choirs or churches, church choirs, whatever you're interested in doing, it feels a little less, I don't know, pushy, I guess, if you say, hey, I'm available to sub if your regular pianist ever is sick or needs a week off or whatever. And I think a lot of directors really appreciate having some backup people that they can call. And then if you
Oh,
show
yeah.
up and do a great job, then they'll recommend you. Or if there's an opening, they'll call you. So I think subbing is a really good way to get started and get some great experience.
So let's say that I'm going to prepare for the wedding. I have been out of shape with my practice lately. What would you recommend as I prepare for this gig and what maybe I should expect?
First of all, the nice thing about weddings is you usually get to choose a lot of the music. So usually for prelude, you can play whatever you want. Sometimes, like I'll always ask the bride if there's a certain genre, like do they want sacred music or classical or pop? So they'll often give me like some general idea, but then you usually get to choose it. So choose stuff that you're comfortable with. Like pull stuff out from when you were in 6th grade and you played this pretty song that you just loved playing over and over because it was so pretty and play that, like put that in your prelude.
Well, and I think too, stuff that's not as well known.
Oh,
People will
sure.
recognize the Chopin, but they won't recognize the Dennis Alexander. So I
Yeah.
think that's really smart.
And it is nice to put in some of the classics too. And most brides will request Canon in D, Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring, the Bridal March. So having a book with all the standard wedding classics in it is a good idea too. I have a free resource with all the questions that you want to ask ahead of time, like what song are you going to use for walking down the aisle? How many people are there going to be walking down the aisle? Is there any extra service music? Are you going to be accompanying anyone? Like is there going to be a singer that you're going to be accompanying? Do they need any music for the reception? Or there's just a lot of questions that you want to make sure you get answered. And sometimes brides, usually they're not musical. And so they don't even know what they don't know. So you have to kind of be proactive and ask all these questions to make sure that you know what you're doing. Now, I will say the trickiest thing about playing for weddings, in my opinion, is the timing of it because you don't always know how long exactly it's going to take the bride to get down the aisle or the bridal party. Personally, I like to go to the rehearsal if I can, just to kind of get a sense of the timing. It just makes me feel better. I know some people are like, well, that's more time I have to give, and I'm not getting paid extra for that, blah, blah, blah. But for me, just my peace of mind, I try and go to the rehearsal, maybe not the dinner if I don't know anybody, but just go to the rehearsal for an hour and see what the timing is like so that you can time out your songs and know if you need to do repeats or cut them short. But the ideal is, when the bride gets to the front of the aisle, that you stop pretty soon after she gets there because they don't want to just be standing there for 2 minutes while you finish your beautiful music. So finding a cadence and just ending when the bride gets to the front of the aisle.
Okay, so this is my question, because I ran into this for a gig that I played. It was like, I don't know, a realtor party or something years ago that my mom, she's in the realtor world and she roped me into it. She's like, everybody look at my daughter. And I was like, oh my gosh. But I had to buy and purchase all this music. And sometimes music is not cheap. Do you kind of calculate that in? Do you, I would not even know how to charge.
So, yeah, I mean, at this point, I have a decent collection, and there's always more music that I want and think, "Oh, this would be great for this gig," but I try and use the stuff I have first as much as possible. Like, if I'm playing for a birthday party or I played for a bridal shower last year where I was just background music, I use what I have as much as possible, and then, like, that particular one, they wanted some Taylor Swift, and I had 0 Taylor Swift, so I did. I think it was Jennifer Eklund had a collection of Taylor Swift
Oh,
piano arrangements that were, easy enough that I could learn pretty quickly, but I could use, like, several of the ones out of the collection. So, instead of buying, like, a whole bunch of different books or random
she has
pieces.
so much great
Oh, yeah,
stuff.
she's great.
Like, yeah, just to kind of like give her a shout out real quick. I've noticed that a lot of the stuff that the students request, she's got beautiful arrangements that are not that difficult at all. Definitely sight readable for us.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's one tip, like buy a collection or like if you're playing for a wedding, actually in that resource that I'm going to give you, there's a few there's like 2 or 3 collections that I found that have all the standards in. So you can buy one book and have a whole bunch of the stuff that you need. So that's one thing about buying music. Now, as far as rates go, it's all over the map, really, with how to set your rates or what to charge. I mean, even for the same exact gig, like churches, there's churches that, well, first of all, there's churches that just have volunteer musicians, which, that's fine. Maybe that's your service to the church, and I totally respect that. When I go to my home church where I grew up, I don't get paid. Like, I'm happy to play offertory or whatever they need, and I never expect to get paid there. They don't pay their musicians, and so I just know that, and it's my service to them. There's other churches out here in California that I can get paid $300 for Sunday morning or so whatever.
Wow.
So there's a huge range, first of all. So the first thing is sometimes the people hiring you already have their price in mind. And they'll tell you, or you can ask like what their budget is. If you find a gig on Facebook, a lot of times they'll say what the pay rate is. And then you decide, okay, am I okay with that? Or do I want to try and negotiate? Or do I just want to not even go there? Like if it's way too low, sometimes I'm like, there's no way they're going to come up to what I would feel comfortable with. So I'm just not even gonna put my name in the hat or however you wanna say it. So as far as rates go, one of the first things I think about is what is gonna make me not resent this gig? So
Yeah,
if
that's good.
is there a number that I'm gonna feel good getting myself dressed, maybe buying some music, putting in the practice time, putting on lipstick, and going to the gig and having fun and feeling good. I don't want to be at this gig thinking, I can't believe I'm doing this for $50." Like you
Yeah.
don't want to feel resentful. It'd be better to just say no and stay in your pajamas than to feel that resentment the whole time. So that's kind of my first thing. But still beyond that, people are like, okay, well, do I charge 75 or 300? I mean, it's all over the place, right? So you just kind of There is a little bit of math you can do. Like sometimes I'll think about my private teaching rate, my hourly rate, and think that's kind of a good ballpark number of what I would want to get paid to play. You also want to consider things like, of course, how much time is it going to take, but also how hard is the music? How much time am I going to be putting into this ahead of time? Now, they're not gonna pay your hourly teaching rate for all that practice time, I'm sorry to say, but you wanna take those things into consideration. How far are you gonna be traveling? Are there extra rehearsals? Things like this. How much stress is it gonna cause you in your life? How disruptive is it gonna be? Now, as you know, Jackie, I did create a collaborative pianist rate calculator. It's a free resource that we'll put in the show notes where you can put in your base rate, which is kind of just a lowish number that you would feel okay with if you didn't have to do any work. Like, say you could just show up, sight read the music for an hour. What would you feel good charging? So maybe $50, just that. I think that's kind of the default in the rate calculator. And then you can put in the other variables. So you can say, how much time is it going to take? And you can tweak that number. You can say, how difficult is the music? There's even a spot where you can put if you are a beginner, like intermediate level accompanist or an expert, something like that. And then it will calculate a rate for you at the end. And you can play around with it. I mean, it's a tool. Again, it's not like this is the gold standard for accompanist rates. It's just a tool that you can use. And if you're like, ooh, that's way too high, maybe you can adjust some of those different variables. But it does give you a ballpark, and it's fun to mess around with.
What is one thing that you wish every teacher knew about accompanying?
I think I wish teachers realized how much it can improve a student's musicianship. When you are collaborating with other people, whether it's playing a four-hand piece or accompanying a little friend who's a singer or big friend, whatever, who's a singer, or any type of collaboration, first of all, it's going to improve your rhythm. You cannot have bad rhythm and be collaborating with someone else. You have to have good rhythm. And then I was talking on another podcast recently about how when I play with other musicians who are at a little bit higher level, it brings me to that higher level. And so giving students that opportunity, even if it's playing duets with us as the teacher, it will help elevate their musicianship to a higher level. It's just natural. It just does. So I think that's the one thing.
So do you think that that would be a good way to prepare students if they wanted to be in accompanying, just start with duets and
Absolutely. Yeah,
ensembles?
it's kind of
Okay.
the gateway, I guess, to accompanying for sure.
What do you think would be the best way for someone to take their very first step into this world? Maybe they hear this podcast and they're like, well, that would help me. Like maybe July is going to be a little hard. What would be that very first step?
I would say go down the rabbit hole, see if you can find any gigs, just, do some Facebook searching, maybe some Google searches. I used to just search on Google. When I was, like, in grad school and desperate for gigs, I would just do, like, piano gigs near me or collaborative piano. I mean, I would just do Google searches, and sometimes something would pop up. And then I think my biggest thing is to say yes. Whatever opportunities come along, because if people know you're a pianist, they're probably going to ask you to accompany at some point. If you think about it,
Yeah.
you've probably been asked to do something, whether it was play at a church or play for a friend or something. And so just say yes. And then if you get scared, I can help you.
Yes, because Rachel has oodles of resources on this.
I
You have a
do.
Facebook page as well
I have
that
a
you just
Facebook page. I have a
started.
YouTube channel. I have a course. I mean, I have all the things, and there's always more coming.
All right. Well, is there anything else that you would like to leave with us before we sign off as far as accompanying goes?
I think a lot of piano teachers and pianists in general are scared of accompanying, and you don't need to be. It does not have to be a scary thing. I mean, it's the joy of my life. besides my son, of course. But I think it's so fun to, you get to know so many great people, and it improves your performing skills. We didn't even talk about that, but all the performance opportunities, I mean, it's just the best. And every pianist should be doing it. There's so many opportunities. If you think about all of the instrumentalists, singers, choirs, musical theaters, churches that need an accompanist, there's so many opportunities. And we just have to go out and find them and say yes.
And I love that too, because why did we become a teacher in the first place? Because we love making music. So get paid for making music. It's a
Yes.
beautiful thing.
Yeah.
You can do it. All right. Well, thank you, Rachel. I'm so grateful for you and for all the tips and advice that you have. And now I'm inspired and I'm thinking, should I take on more projects? Because, just love me some more projects.
I know you do, Jackie. Well, thank you so much for having me, Jackie. It was so fun to talk with you. And it obviously is a topic that I love talking about all day, every day. So thank you.
Okay, teachers, thank you so much for joining me today with Rachel as we talked about accompanying and making a little bit more money for the summer. And I wanted to remind you that Music Studio Bootcamp registration is open, and it will be so until May 16th. So remember, this bootcamp is a 3-day mastermind for a limited amount of teachers intended to set up solid studio policies that parents actually follow, price your lessons with confidence so you don't feel guilty about your charging, and build a stress-free schedule that avoids burnout, establish efficient systems for smoother communication. I will have templates for you in Microsoft Word as well as Notion, and get some clarity on finances and your studio growth strategies. So this is for all independent music teachers, new and seasoned. It's mainly targeted for teachers who are struggling with organization and studio management, and educators who want to raise rates and set their policies confidently. Really, this is for anyone who wants less stress and more success in their studio. The registration link is in the show notes, so be sure to check it out. Be sure to join me next week as I meet up with Sam from musy.live. Gone are the days that we have to deal with Zoom lessons. No more arranging the settings, setting it to students, getting it all figured out. Musy.live takes care of all of it for you. And I can speak from personal experience because I have been using it for the past 6 months and we love it. So I'm really, really excited to talk to Sam and have you all hear about musy.live as well. If you found value in today's episode, I would be so grateful for a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. These reviews really help more teachers find the show and benefit from the information that we share each week. And as a reminder, this podcast is for free. And if you're enjoying the work that I love doing with other teachers and you feel ever so compelled, I did start a Buy Me a Cup of Coffee account. So that is in the show notes if you would like to click on that link and maybe help me out a little bit. All right, teachers, that's all I got for now. Keep teaching, keep loving, and keep practicing. Take care.